She said she was electrocuted and in an accident when she was a little girl. And when she came to at the end of her hospital bed were her dead relatives.
Wow.
And ever since then, she has been able to not only see and feel their presence, but she can communicate with them. And I turn to her, I'm like, so are there dead people here in the studio? She's like, oh yeah, everybody has at least one with them. And the second I start talking to people, more are going to show up. It's going to get really crowded. I'm like, you're kidding. And I love this kind of stuff. I believe in this kind of stuff. I love it. Mm-hmm. So the first reading is off the hook.
I'm calling you because I'm wondering if you have a handful of minutes. I'm over here with the audience. We've been talking about your latest book and believing in self and all of that. And I would love to just run a couple of things by you. You've got a few minutes.
Absolutely. For you?
For me?
Of course. In the audience? Yes. Let's go.
All right. So let's start off on somewhat of a macabre focus here.
Okay.
You sent over to me a handful of stories that you like to talk about. And I don't think I've ever heard this one, but how your dead father-in-law. I have messages from my dead dad from beyond the grave. So I feel you on this. So yep. How your dead father-in-law convinced you to move your entire family to a new state after he came through a psychic medium on your talk show.
This is a crazy story. And in order for you to get the full scale of this story, I got to tell you the backstory. So here I am. I'm in my dream job. I had, as a little girl, I would get home from elementary school in Western Michigan, and my mom would be tuned into the station in Chicago, WGN, that we could get, and Oprah and Donahue would be on. And I always thought that would be the coolest thing in the world to have a job where you get to talk to people all day about their lives. And so lo and behold, I turned 50 years old. I am hosting a daytime talk show with Sony Pictures. We're filming it at CBS Broadcast Center. And that whole year I'd been commuting from Boston, where we raised our kids, down to New York. I'd be down there during the week, and then I would head home on the weekends. And so what was going on in the backdrop of my life during season 1 is our son was finishing up the 8th grade, and he needed to go to high school. For a number of reasons, the public high school where our daughters went was just not a fit. He had struggled profoundly with dyslexia. He is not a big sports kid. And as his older sister so lovingly said, dude, they're going to eat you alive. You can't go to that school. Like, that's not the school for you. You're too cool for that. So he had already been to a school to help with the dyslexia, and that school ended in 8th grade. And so I said to our son, you can choose any high school you want to go to. Now, never in a million years did I think he would choose a school outside of the Boston area. He is also not a kid, because he got bullied at summer camp, that would ever go to a prep school sleepaway. And I didn't want him to anyway, because I don't want to miss out on his high school. So all of a sudden he starts saying, I want to go to high school in Southern Vermont. And there's this great public high school in Southern Vermont, like just a phenomenal school. And we know about the school because it happens to be in the town in Southern Vermont, Manchester, Vermont, where my in-laws have had a home for a long time. My husband grew up racing for Stratton Mountain. It's a big part of their family. And, I was like, Vermont? I'm sorry. First of all, that's where people go to retire.
That's right.
Secondly, I don't know if you've noticed this, but we live in Boston and I have a talk show in New York. And if you're going to go to any state, why not look in New York City? He's not a city kid. No way. And so we literally had a family throwdown for several months about this topic. And it finally culminated.
Okay, wait. Did he say anything like, Mom, you said any school?
Yes.
Okay.
And so it finally literally came to a throwdown in the front hallway of our house, just a couple feet from me, where we are all sitting on the floor, Chris, myself, and Oakley. I'm crying. He's crying. Chris is upset. Where I'm going, Chris, when your dad got a job promotion that took him to London, you and your mother did not move to Vermont. You moved with your father. Like, I feel like you two are abandoning me. I know that you're unhappy, dude, but can't you find a freaking high school in Boston? Like, come on.
Yeah.
So they finally were like, you're right. We can see how you would feel that way. I will not go to high school in Vermont. Okay. And that, of course, made me feel like a shitty mom, because you then get what you want. And then you're like, why couldn't you just see that all along? Why'd I have to fight you and now feel like a jerk for now jamming this down your throat? And, the school in Southern Vermont is like crazy cool. So he starts begrudgingly looking at high schools around here. So now it's January of 2020 and COVID has not shut the world down yet.
Right.
It is late January. He has applied to several schools in the Boston area. We're kind of coming up to the zone where he's going to have to go in for interviews. And all of a sudden they book this psychic medium on our talk show. And, this was not the kind of psychic medium that was going to get an audience list, because the dirty little secret about daytime talk shows is that unless you're Ellen, you're basically paying people to sit in those seats.
That's right.
You're bussing in church groups that we don't have an audience list. Like half the folks there are coming for the pizza in the middle of the day and staying for the second show so they cannot be in the rain outside. That's just is what it is. So it's not like anything was rigged, because we didn't even have the means to do that. And
Right.
So this woman had been on Oprah a bunch, very, very highly regarded. I can't remember her name. But what ends up happening is, the first segment, I asked her, how did you learn how to speak to people who have died? And she said she was electrocuted and in an accident when she was a little girl. And when she came to at the end of her hospital bed were her dead relatives.
Wow.
And ever since then, she has been able to not only see and feel their presence, but she can communicate with them. And I turn to her, I'm like, so are there dead people here in the studio? She's like, oh yeah, everybody has at least one with them. And the second I start talking to people, more are going to show up. It's going to get really crowded. I'm like, you're kidding. And I love this kind of stuff. I believe in this kind of stuff. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So the first reading is off the hook. Off the freaking hook. She literally stands up and walks to one section and asks 4 women in the second row to stand up all together. I didn't even know they had come together. And she looks at the first woman and she says, does your mother know you're pregnant yet? That was her reaction too.
Shit.
And then she said, because her mother was with her, which I also didn't know.
Oh, no.
Then she said, now you've lost 2 babies, right?
Wow.
And the woman starts to cry.
Yeah.
And she says, the daughter that you lost is here.
Wow.
And she wants you to know that she's been watching over you and you're going to be okay. And she is now going to pass over. But the son that you lost, now she starts crying. He's going to stay because he's connected to the son you're carrying.
Whoa. Did she know that she was having a son yet? Oh, shit.
She had found out she was pregnant 2 or 3 days before.
Wow.
And sure enough, she called our producers about 3 weeks later. It's a boy.
Wow.
That was the first freaking reading. And from there, it just went like, phew.
Okay.
So
okay.
near the end
So
of
what
the-
are you thinking? What are you thinking right now?
I'm thinking, this is so cool. Oh my God, who's she gonna read that?
But you're not thinking it's going to be you.
Oh no, I don't think she's going to talk to me at all. I've had experiences where I've had people come to me, or I've had a friend of mine that that died by suicide rather.
Yeah.
Or I should say hopelessness.
Yeah.
And depression, came to me at a table rocking ceremony. There's a channeling thing that was incredibly amazing. So anyway, so I am very open to this. And so near the end of the show, she turns to me and suddenly says, Mel, there's somebody behind you that is insistent on talking to you. Are you open to speaking to them? I'm like, absolutely. And she says, well, it's a man and he's in a military uniform and he's a very decorated pilot in the Air Force. And I kind of cock my head and I'm like, I'm not related to anybody in the Air Force. And she goes, do you have any friends? And I'm like, nope. And then she said, I actually think you're related to this guy. And I'm like, no, definitely not. My grandfather was in the Navy, Frank Schneeberger, but he was not a pilot in the Air Force. And she said, does the letter K mean anything to you? And I said, nope, not really. And she said, how about the name Ken? And I said, well, yeah, that's what we call our daughter. Her name is Kendall. She's named after her father-in-law. His name was Kenneth, but they called him Ken. And she said, could it be Ken? And I said, absolutely not. My father-in-law died 11 years ago. He was not in the Air Force. He was not a pilot. He ran an advertising agency.
Okay.
And she goes, are you sure it's not him? Because he's getting agitated. I think he's saying that he wants you to verify this. And I'm like, I don't need to verify this. Like, I know the man. Like, I would have known if he was in the military. He was not in the military. He ran an advertising agency. Now, meanwhile, they're calling my husband, Christopher, in the control room. And all of a sudden in my ear, I hear, your father-in-law was in the Air Force Reserves in college. It had always been a dream of his to be a pilot.
Oh, wow. He
couldn't pass the pilot's exam because they discovered he was colorblind. I literally, this is something you cannot Google, by the way.
Yeah.
This is something that, in knowing the man for nearly, like 18 years, I never knew this. So now I know my dead father-in-law, Ken Robbins, is standing right behind me at the talk show. I can feel him. And she says, he has come here because I guess he has a lot of grandkids. And I'm like, yep. And she said, and is your son the youngest? And I'm like, mm-hmm. And she said, well, she goes, I don't know what this means, but maybe you'll know what this means. I think he says a nickname. There's like a nickname. And then she goes, no, it's a school. There's a school. There's something going on at a school. Like maybe his friends are calling him something, or friends at school, something about a school. Something's going on at a school.
No way.
You don't like it. He has come here to tell you that you must trust your son.
Whoa.
It gets even crazier. So now I'm basically levitating on my own talk show in front of a live audience. I don't know that I could ever wear those pants again because I basically defecated and then it's just happening. And then I'm like, motherfucker, this fucking guy comes to my talk show with a fact I can't Google, so I know it's him. Of course he does. And he's telling me I got to fucking move to Vermont. So then I like walk off the talk show. I call my husband and I'm like, that's it. Like, we got to do this. And he said, you're not going to believe this. I said, now what? He said, my mother called yesterday. I said, yeah. And he said, I guess a year ago, because she's been a widow for 11 years, I guess a year ago, she wrote a letter to the owner of a townhome in a little community in the valley that all of her girlfriends live in, asking if they ever wanted to sell the unit, she would like to buy it. Well, apparently they wrote back last week. She put in an offer. It's been accepted. And she called me yesterday to ask if we wanted to build the house that mom and dad built, or wanted to buy the house that mom and dad built.
Whoa.
That Ken designed.
Wow.
And he said, I told her no, because we were staying in Boston. Oh, no. And I said, call her back and tell her yes. We'll buy the house they built and we will move to Southern Vermont. And I'll tell you, like, it makes me just, our son has never been happier. You don't know how unhappy somebody is or how lonely they are until you see them happy again.
Yeah. It
is the single best thing we ever could have done. Now, doesn't mean it's been easy. I'm, obviously, since I'm sitting here in our Boston home working and they're up in Vermont, but it's been extraordinary. And that's the story of how my dead father-in-law, and it's the last chapter in the book. And it's sort of it ties this whole theme together that I know you believe in too. And that is that your life is trying to get you to pay attention.
That's right.
That there are things that are meant for you. And I think that we all can sit in the present moment and we can look backwards and we can trace every experience of our lives, the painful ones, the traumatic ones, the abusive ones, the amazing ones, and we can see how they're dots on the map of our lives. Mm-hmm. And we can see how they connect to this moment and how all of those things have made you you, and all of those things have prepared you in some way for this moment. And I think that there is extraordinary beauty and power and grace and ease in being able to live your life in a way that you can sit in this moment, no matter how challenging or terrifying or exhilarating or amazing it is, and know that it too is just a dot on the map of your life. And it too will come and it will go. And it too is in its own way preparing you for something extraordinary that hasn't happened yet. Yeah. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.